Some say we're all connected and surrounded by an ever-present invisible force. Today, this seems like a description of wireless technology. I believe we're always connected, but as humans we don't always go around in a perceptive state. Some of us run around on autopilot with years of conditioning having influenced our perception in a subjective manner. It's only when we slow down and become present can we see the world objectively for what is going on in that moment. Understand yourself and understand others. Do this and you can adapt and work in harmony with another. In person this is much easier to do, but how does one create this connection in the online world where you may not know who you are talking to? Join me on this journey as we talk to strategic business mentor and human behavior expert Sukhi Wahiwala as he shares how understanding psychometrics and personality traits can help you connect better online. Suki is an amazing business mentor, and not just that, he's a master at rapport, and I've seen him in flow and in motion with people, and just the stuff that he can do and how he builds instant rapport with people is totally amazing. So what I want to do today is basically dig into his mind a bit to figure out what he's doing, how he does it, and how we can actually then take that information and apply it to what we're doing, not only offline, but then to see how we might be able to focus that online as well. So Suki, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time out today, and I know you've been very busy with all the stuff you're doing, and I really appreciate you taking your time out to get this interview sorted.
It's an absolute pleasure and honour on my behalf, and thanks very much to the whole DR audience and how they get together. This guy's absolutely the bomb. He may be talking about me being this super mentor and stuff like that. Well, I deliver nothing more than what God gives me to deliver anyway. But I'm here because I'll do nothing else besides support you always, and I'm just really honoured to be here as well.
Firstly, Suki, just so that the audience gets to know a bit about yourself, and if you just let them know what you do, what you're up to, just so that they get to find out a bit more about yourself.
I'm a 7th generation business individual, businessman. Once upon a time, we would just call ourselves very simply businessmen, but the reality is that nowadays it's a real buzzword and we call ourselves entrepreneurs. Personally, it's the same. So to me, it's the same thing. So we've spent 7 generations of distillation of how business should be interacted and in our own methodology of our Wahiwala family. So my history, I started my career within business over 20 years ago. When I was about 17, 18 years old, I've been nurtured by nobody but the best, my own parents, who are from both sides of my family, from my mum's side as well as from my father's side, have both been in business for generations, and the distillation is unbelievable. So in that space, I've worked with over 24 sectors now, and constantly increasing. I'm investing in companies, in smaller seedling companies, organizations, all the time to try and bring them to the best they can possibly be. But I work with over 380 plus companies and individuals to bring them to their dreams, to help them chase their dreams, help them get their ambitions and their goals set for life, stabilize their worlds. So the evolution has been quite diverse. I think I was in an interview before and somebody said specifically is that it's easy to say you've worked in all these sectors, but once you've actually sit there and actually ask somebody around it, and they actually have a very what we call evidential conversation around it, which is clearly backed up by experience, you know immediately that the person is telling you the truth. And
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That's kind of key thing, is that the fact that you got the experience within all these different levels, from basically grassroots all the way through to corporate level and above.
That's right.
So when you go through that, now if we take your experience and we base it on your kind of communication with people, and bring it in line with the whole concept of rapport, and how rapport works and what that is, what would you say that rapport is?
I think rapport, in a honest way, is something that was created the moment we had what we call any kind of conscious brain. Rapport is the difference between conscious thinking and unconscious thinking. So rapport is when we connect in an emotional way with each other. And the moment we get our brains involved in this is when actually there's a disassociation of rapport. So for example, it's the feeling when there's only two people. This is the simplest way of it. When you're having a conversation with me and there's nobody else in the room, the only time you remember there's somebody else in the room is when somebody points it out. That's kind of deep rapport. Rapport is when two symbiotic energies or thoughts are in alignment of thought. So if I'm trying to go somewhere specifically with a thought, with an action, that rapport would bring us together and we would travel together. So rapport is when two human individuals connect with each other. Rapport is sometimes unconsciously when you have an animal or a dog, they just seem to know where you want to go. And you have that predictive element within that space. But rapport is a safe, trustworthy environment. It's a trustworthy connection with somebody. So it's like you don't have to think about things when you're in rapport. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it helps, if we're talking about in commercial business, it helps you to connect with the people, helps people to visualize themselves in the position. It builds trust, order, and it also allows you to, in some cases, make sales or not make sales. Does that make sense?
Could you give us a few examples of where you've had to be in rapport in order to make a business transaction, for example, or relationships or anything like that, which gives us a bit more of a breakdown of how rapport may be created in that situation or scenario?
Okay, so rapport for me as a human being, the key elements of rapport for me basically are when I'm actually in connection with my maker, because I believe that I'm constantly in the flow of God Almighty. So my apologies if some of you don't understand or agree with the concept of God, then please replace the word God with anything else that suits you. Could be spirituality, could be the universe, anything that works for you, if that's okay. So in context of my connection with God, universe, the energy, the source, ether, anything you want to connect it to be, the first element of rapport is when I am in rapport with myself. So it's an inner rapport. So if I don't feel at one with myself in this interview, I'm already out of rapport. So for me to try and get you into rapport, or me to fit in rapport with you, it'd be virtually impossible because I'm out of sync myself. It's like an alignment thing. So the first thing is I'm forever grateful of anything that's in my life. For example, I connect with God. And for me, I'm grateful for that connection with God. Does that make sense? Thereafter, how do I then connect with other people is I have these are like the pre-frames of rapport, and I'm going into rapport, I'll go into the details of rapport later. But for me, the pre-frames of rapport is that the first thing I must want is the benefit of the other person. Because if I used influence and things of this sort of nature to influence people into taking action towards something that doesn't benefit them, then my integrity's gone. My intention is impure.
Right.
So for me, there's a few elements. The one element is, am I connected? Do I feel connected? Two, if I connect to any third person, is it for something that's in their benefit? Because anything that I'm selling somebody, if you've got water and I'm sharing this with you, I have to ensure in my brain that I believe this is the right thing for you. There's no point me giving you water when you're absolutely hydrated and really what you're looking for is food. Does that make sense? So one of the key things that within my group of companies and the way I work in my methodology, it wasn't so when I was younger. You know, evolution happens as we grow old and we become wiser. So for me, the key elements is, do my productizations, do my services, do anything I offer actually connect with the needs of my audience or the needs of my client base and customers? And if those few what we call presets are in place, and only then can we engage some kind of physical, mechanical, verbal rapport.
Right. So you've mentioned a few things in there which just picking out on. So you're saying one is their need, one you mentioned trust.
Yes.
And then to be in sync with what they're trying to achieve. And then you putting yourself in a position where you understand that so you can deliver to them what they're after.
It's very similar to the context that I put in when I have a training, which is called Selling Without Selling. And in there, it's about omitting people's challenges towards your product or towards making that transaction with you or to take your service or for you to offer your service to them. So within that process, you have to be in ultimate rapport with the person's needs. Because of true rapport is whatever the other person requires, if you align with it and you make a genuine, honest double check to say that what I'm offering actually supplies the solution to what that person requires, then every element of your interaction with that person is blessed and it will happen.
Right. So Suki, many times I've seen you in a situation where when you're talking to people, there's almost this thing about like creating instant rapport with them. Right, you just gone into the situation and it's like, it blows my mind. Like, it's like, how did he do that? How did he figure that? It's just like you've built instant rapport with them without even knowing what their needs or desires or what they're after, kind of thing. So how does that differ? How does that work in relation to rapport?
Stepping on what I just said a moment ago, it's about me being aligned with myself.
Okay.
Now, if one looks at their own inner feelings, we've got these little transmitters within our psychology, within our spirituality. They constantly transmit this information to us, and they tell us in feeling, in gesture. You know, the holographic universe teaches us. It's a book. It's written called The Holographic Universe, and it says in there, it says that the whole is in the part, and the part is in the whole. That means basically every single element is within itself. So as I'm touching my finger, that is connected with my brain. It's not sending a signal, it's actually connected. So it's actually just instantly releasing the information at the same time. The point of where we're going is that if I'm to genuinely help somebody, I must pay attention to what the information that my spirituality and my being, my physical being and my spiritual being are sending me. So some people call this intuition, and some people call this clairvoyancy. Some people call it whatever you would like to call it. I mean, the reality is it's infinite. To me, it's just connection.
Right.
To me, it's just connection. I genuinely, and I'm so honored that you felt that way, that I connect with people straightforward. I have no intention besides the better for them. Okay. And so all I'm interested in is how can I help them?
Right.
And it's genuine, it's honest. There is no need. I haven't got that reluctance or that urge to push to try and get that sale or push to get them to be my friend.
Right.
I'm just there to be what we call in our Sikh faith and Punjabi, as you understand, it's called sevadar. So I'm here to be in seva. Seva means to be in service of others, charitable service of others. That's principally it. So
right.
I genuinely believe there are mechanics behind this, and I will share that in a moment. But the reality is the first element is the spiritual element, is the element of deep rapport, comes from your own internal honesty, right. of knowing that you are telling the truth all the time, that you're actually helping that person for the better for them. Within the Sikh faith, again, my apologies if this is not about the Sikh faith, but you're interviewing myself, and I am a Sikh, and I am a very strong believer of the Sikh faith. It's my way of life. So for me, you know, some of our founders, which are on the wall there, Guru Nanak, they've given us the understanding that God itself is just the truth. As long as you connect into the truth and you're being honest with people and telling them the truth that's going to help them, there's no other energy that's going to interfere with that. But the moment you come out of your veering, of your own, what we call misalignment, is when you lose that connection with that third person. So I'm humbled by your words that saying that you seem to see, can't work out how I get through to people. I think it's not me. The honest truth. I think I'm just connecting with people with the gift that's been given to me, right. With a pure intention of just helping them. So that's the spiritual element. That must be the first and primary. Now, mechanical questions and answers of this would be following, for example, what the stages. The stages are, you must listen. The reality is you've got to stop your own world.
Yeah.
I have a little acronym which I share with the world. And I share with all my private mentees. And it sounds a bit funny, but we've kept it on purpose in the odd sounding acronym, SLUAT, for a particular reason. So you don't forget it, because there's so many really cool acronyms that just, they're always a sentence, and you forget the sentence, you forget which way it's going, but you're not going to really forget something that doesn't make any sense to the conscious brain. So under the process of SLUAT, we would say the first element of true understanding, connection with people, and self-learning, because that's what it's all about, self-learning, is silence. So the element of S would be for silence, to silence your brain, silence your mind, silence all the spinning, all the mix-up and all the buzzing that's going on in your brain, all the interference, as we call it in quantum physics. Get rid of all those interference patterns. So get yourself into a state that connects with yourself and the human being. That's the intention behind this. So silence is the first stage. Without silence, you cannot listen. So the second stage is to listen. And once an individual listens to what they're trying to share with their world, what others are trying to share, once you've silenced yourself and you actually, only then can you listen. And when you listen, you truly just let it flow inside of yourself. So if somebody says, oh, I have a problem with biting my nails. So one would say, okay, I got that. So I'm silenced, I'm listening to that conversation, and I'm understanding. The next stage is you for understanding. After I've listened, I understand what that means. So I'm connecting with the needs of the other person first.
Yeah.
So absolutely, silence yourself. You must listen, and then you must understand what that means. So get the flow in your brain to understand, okay, so is there a solution for this challenge? Yeah, or this problem, this issue? Got it? Then the next stage, after understanding it, truly internalizing yourself, is to activate that knowledge. So after you've understood the change, you need to activate this. And to activate this is, the next stage would be, I've got the problem, now the activation comes in, now activate the solution. So how do I find all the activated parts of it? Which is why SULA is the first activation. Then there's A again, which is action it. And that's where I then deliver my active solution to their challenge. And then the final section again is to teach. Unless you've taught this and shared with somebody, it's like, have you ever been in a position, or I'm sure some of us have all been in a position, where you've got the answer, but you don't share it with that person. And you're hidden behind thoughts of, shall I not help this person? You know, is what I'm going to say going to be valuable to them? Kind of when I was younger, I was like that as well. But with rapport, have you noticed I've not really talking about direct rapport, because there's so much more than just the mechanical process of rapport. It's in mechanics of rapport. If I went into NLP, it would be so easy to explain. But that doesn't guarantee you understanding. It's about actually getting yourself in that resonance place and actually just connecting with your friends, with your clients, with your person on an honest way. So to teach somebody else is the final steps of true learning. And it also stops, remembering the NT, it stops you from getting the solution in your head and just not sharing it with the person, thinking my solution is not worth it. You know, I am not good enough to share that information. So how does one do that is the question. For me, it's about, if I know I'm only sharing the information that's given via God. Once again, I'll take apologize in advance, but I don't think it should be too abrasive, because I'm sharing from what I believe in the truth, because this is about myself. I have another Sikh part of the Sikh scriptures from the Holy Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which is our Bible equivalent. And it teaches us to understand that Mera mujh mein kuch nahi, jo kuch hai so tera. Whatever I have within myself, Mera mujh mein kuch nahi. Whatever I have within myself is not mine. And whatever I do have within myself is yours anyway. So this feeling of being a catalyst, a transition of information, comes from above. In our language, you would say turu. So it comes from wherever it comes from. The information comes through, and it comes from the heavens, or it comes from the connection of God, and it shares with a third person. So I am nothing more than a catalyst to share this information. Like today I'm sharing this information, I'm hoping some of it will touch in some humble way. So the principal understanding is, it's just for me to get this information through the other person. It's like, I need to share this with you. By the way, there is a solution for you, and I'm not giving you the solution. The solution's coming from up above. I'm just the catalyst. I'm just at that moment, the chosen party to share that information. So when you're in those sort of spaces inside your inner psychology, you'll never have the reluctance of sharing that document, or sharing that change, or sharing the solution with somebody. And I think one of the key answers to that is that you should never have the reluctance of helping people then. Because it's not about you, it's about them.
Right.
Thank you. And there's a final point. I know you've got probably a poised question on this, but going back to how one connects before they've even connected, this is the solution. This is the bit. Is when you're not really looking at them as a future, as a human being, their physics, their physiology. The first thing is actually listen to what they're truly trying to ask you for. Because I'm sure you've had many a situation where somebody turns around and comes into the room and says, oh, I'm really thirsty. But once you pop the water there, they haven't even touched it. The water still sits there. because they weren't really asking for the water. It just felt comfortable to say, I need some water. So they'll share the water methodology, but really they were looking for a chair to sit down. So all you've got to do is slow yourself down to understand what their true needs are and create the solution for them on that level. And what really happens is something magical. When you connect into that from yourself, that rapport is automatic. Because rapport is being warmed to trust, to honesty, to the truth, to somebody who understands me. And when you can understand people better than themselves, rapport is instant. Because they can realize that they can get a message from you, or they can really get a solution in their mind. When I was taught when I was younger as a child, this is very much a Punjabi saying, is that if you have a problem, even if you just share it with the wall, you will come up with some kind of an answer. So now let's mechanize that a second. Let's put it into some kind of psychological terms. A gentleman called Cartesian, he says the written word and the spoken word is more powerful than it's stuffed around in your head. So for example, if I'm sharing with the wall, even if you just listen to your echo, it's externalized, and now you're using other senses. It's no longer just perforating around in your brain and your mind. It's coming out and bouncing into your ears. So the context of this is that with it just externalizing, all of a sudden, you tend to see it as somebody else's challenge. So immediately you can create your own solutions going forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you externalize your thoughts, people are actually externalizing their thoughts all the time. Just that they don't know what thoughts they're sharing with the third person. All you've got to be a master of rapport is to understand truly what people are asking you, and not just get hung up on the language that they're listening and they're talking about. Can I have a glass of water? You just need to connect with their inner soul and take direction.
Right. Well, that's quite deep. So no, what's apparent from that is that whole thing about connection, about being genuine in your approach.
Yes.
Right. And then it's not just about just kind of talking to people, it's about using more of your senses to kind of almost tune into the person and really getting to the core of what they're trying to get, and that requires work on our side to kind of
before we can
connect with. Right, that's pretty cool, right? Okay. That's got me in deep thought pondering now.
Good.
Right.
You didn't want a basic interview, did you?
No.
You weren't expecting anything less from me, were you?
See why I'm so excited? This stuff is so, it just blows your mind. Okay, cool. So Suki, one of the things you mentioned, so I suppose this question is going to be a bit of a twofold question, right? One is that you mentioned this acronym, SLUET. So the first part of that question would be like, why SLUET? Why would you come up with a name like that? Because what you covered in that, it seems to be very concise as to what rapport is and how it works. Then the second part of that question would be that the general kind of assumption is that you got these two elements where you've got kind of the offline process, which is personal one-to-one kind of communication. Then you got the digital side of it. Now, generally people would imagine that online is totally different from offline. So using your knowledge on rapport, how do you think that side of it, which we think is digital, so it can't be done, that analog process can't be done in a digital format, what would you say about that, and how do you think that could be covered?
Do you know what? What a great question. This is just really, really good. That's a lovely question. So I'll do my best to answer those really deep questions if I can. First point is, it's a bit of a giggle to know, so why SLUET? I mean, what does that mean? The point is, it doesn't mean anything. That's the main thing. Doesn't mean anything. So I found myself, when I used to follow people's, make a difference and things of this sort of nature. There's some different acronyms that people came up with, other trainers, other philosophers. What they would do is to create these beautiful acronyms and they'd make sense of them. And after a period of about a half a dozen to a dozen of these acronyms, I would start forgetting those acronyms, or they became merged and mixed up with other people's thought processes. Like, for example, somebody said MAD, MAD stands for Make a Difference. It's a very close friend of mine, Dr. Paresh Raghani. He basically he's the king of acronyms. I'm telling you that now, and he uses such beautiful people. He says, he'll say something like, "What, are you going to join me to become mad?" And you're thinking, "Whoa, what's happening here?" And it's a beautiful anchored process, which is a deep part of rapport, memorizing something. But on the anti part of that is, or the other side of that is why not use something that people, in theory, aren't supposed to remember, or is quite odd to remember? So that basically adds even more uniqueness to your acronym, doesn't it? So, because I'm across countries, different countries, I can use a very basic English to make it right. But because we're international, truly, if I use words which don't really sound like any language, it seems to work across borders. Have you ever been in a situation where you've tried to forget a song that you really don't like, but somehow it's just one of those agitated moments, it's constantly flowing in your head? So somehow that song that you don't like Agadoo or whatever it is, the common flow, you don't like it, but it somehow anchored itself into your neurology. And more importantly, you may not think you remember the words, but you seem to catch in the flow and start singing all these lyrics. That's what Sluat is. So Sluat is kind of like the same, where we're creating something that's odd to remember. And by the time you've remembered it, you won't forget it. It's like if anybody says anything close to Sluat, it doesn't make any sense for other people. So the only people who know this are kind of my mentees or my circles or my groups who have taken this philosophy forward. And until my book comes, which is very forward-coming. So here's the context. Do something different. Be memorable and do something odd.
Yeah.
Because disruptive businesses are the ones who tend to cut through the mustard.
Yeah.
And so make your acronym disruptive. Does that answer that first question?
Yeah.
Why
just keeping it different sometimes engages your brain to actually build rapport, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's like, ooh, I remember that because it just sounds funny. It was different.
It's funky, yeah, whatever. Yeah. It should be some really, really funny stuff. That you can get best-selling artists who have never managed to repeat it again because they started to try to make sense of their songs afterwards. But the first ones were nonsense songs, and they seem to have got number one. We call them one-hit wonders, right? So let's make it one of those.
Yeah.
So the second question, could you repeat that section again?
So
just
the
to help a little bit.
Part was basically the kind of general assumption that, okay, you got the offline communication where it's very personal, one-to-one. There's more going on, so you get a deeper, the ability to kind of engage the person on a deeper level to find out what their needs are. And then the other side of it is that, okay, you got digital where you can't always get the information you're looking for from a person who's maybe on your website or, The question is then, is there a way to bridge that where you can actually use the same methods that are used offline in a way that you can use it online to build rapport, and how that might bridge across, or what could be used in order to do that, where you don't know, where there's missing information, where you can't just directly ask the person?
Do you know, that's a beautiful question, and I think that's a world-long challenge, isn't it? But I think the best thing is always to smash myths, isn't it? So the myth itself is that to translate offline rapport with online rapport is quite hard. I kind of agree with that philosophy, but I don't subscribe to it as well, because I believe that there is an opportunity, and a very simple opportunity, to transfer over. Right. So, for example, I'll just stick to the simplicity of Sluat. Before all of this, there has to be that pre-frame, even online or offline, is that integrity, honesty, intention. All of those beautiful things that we're trying to achieve to ensure that our productization actually matches the needs of the prospective client. Yeah, that's the key part of it, because if we get that wrong, today, tomorrow, the day after, our integrity will be challenged. Okay, so that's the key element. So sometimes you can get into a business deal where two individuals, because of their psychometric, or the psychology of their brain, of how they see the world through the map is not the territory. Alfred Korzybski, who an amazing psychiatrist and psychologist of 1930s and 1920s, he wrote a beautiful book called Science and Sanity, and in there he says the map is not the territory. So we need to understand that people will have their own perception, their own model of the world, of how the world is working. So I see the world differently to you. But on digital, we can encapsulate that, in my opinion, a little bit easier and better as well, because in person, you still have to rely upon the weakest link, which is you. And you, as being a human being, will take what we call random choices. Right. But online, it's even easier, because online, it's a set profile. If a person says yes or a person says no, they walk into two different funnels. Does that make sense? So I'm assuming that the audience here understands about commercial productization and funneling. So if not, then I'm sure there's another training for that another time. So I'll just make that assumption if I can. So in flow, we have our own little client flow, don't we? We have a customer or a funnel of how the client goes through our process. So if we are using digital funneling compared to one-to-one funneling, which tends to be very different when you're in front, we have to rely on ourselves one-to-one. So sometimes we could be in a bad mood, we could be not centered, we could have been overexcited, we could be all of those things which would actually affect the outcome. So an extreme of any one of those energies will either attract or detract your future client or your future sale or your future person you can help through charitable trusts. So if you're high octane, you're going to push away all the psychometric individuals from the C compliance. If there's any chance at the end, I'm happy to go through the disc profiling on psychometrics, but we'll keep focused on the first question, which is how to translate that over. So to translate psychological profiling online, you have to, in essence, you have to predict and pre-frame the questioning. So a part of silencing yourself, we have to now silence the audience as well online. So S for silencing. We have to silence the audience. So how do we do this? We have to then go into a realm of asking questions online of the client so that they can center themselves and they can automatically silence themselves. So chatter such as, are you here today for X? Are you here today to get a glass of water? And it's either a yes or a no. This is bringing the person into the element and the realm of silence, we can also call it being present. So when you ask them a simple conscious question, they have to think of the question. Yeah? Are you here today to do A or to do B?
Right.
So we're not saying hi, because that's it's just loose. So when you're going in there, you're asking them a key question saying, are you here to act upon A or B? So there's an element of what we call pre-framing and also an assumptive flow here, which allows you to predict or to guide your client online. So you're not necessarily pushing them into doing something because you're still going to give them those honesty questions. But what you're doing is you're silencing their mind from the chitter-chatter.
Right.
So the next section would be to listen. And to listen, one would have to predict how a client is actually listening to how they're answering the questions. Right. So if you say, are you here today to make a better connection with your client base? The answer is yes or no. And if they go into the yes funnel, the yes downline, you must have had predicted outcomes for them so that they can, so you're actually filtering a bit like a sheep in a herd. You're actually bringing them in toward the gate. And the gate is a solution that will genuinely help them. Not just, I want to sell them something they don't need. Yeah. So we're asking pre-framed questions, we're flowing them, we're putting them into vertical funnels, allowing them to answer the question and put themselves into the right queue. Okay. So in that context, that's how it works. That's the bit that we've got to understand. So once we get the client into the right funnel, that's the listening bit. In our head, we can now create the solution. But in online, instead of having to do it in person, you have to do this live. But online, you don't have to. Online, you can predict this. So the key is the prediction, which is the key part of online. So now we're going to listening. We've gone from listening into understanding what they want. So the understanding part is when you're turning around and giving them solutions to their pre-chosen challenge. Does this make sense? It's kind of simple to follow once you understand. Then we move into the understanding of activating, which is when you're offering them actual solutions. Yeah, and then you go into action where you offer them the solution to, once they've purchased the solution, you go and you deliver them a practical flow of how to use that solution in their life or into their challenge. And then the T, which is the end, which is teach, we still need them to complete that process. Otherwise, the learning is not done. So the end element of learning is to teach and to share with others. So online, to teach others is really simple, or to share with others is really simple. So using some kind of social methodology through some kind of what we call, not viral, I'd say buzz creation. People actually just interacting, saying, do you know what, I bought this product, it's stunning. Just pressing return. By them just making that statement, as I said, with Korzybski's logic and also Cartesian, by putting it into the written word, that means on tapped, externalizing it from themselves, it becomes universal law. And it helps them to embed that I really got the value from this product.
So basically what you're saying is that in that kind of situation, you have to know your audience, know your target audience. You need to know possibly every situation or answer to their questions in order to be able to make them listen online.
And that comes from, you're spot on, that comes from actually thrashing out the possibilities. So some kind of a mind map where we create a possibilities chart. So you can say, these are the possibilities of answers. They should all be related to, if I go back to the original question, the original way I answered this is down to the individual psychometric. Because at the end of the day, digitally or in person, online or offline, the end of the day, the communication between two individuals. Because the person has to see themselves online taking the solution or receiving a solution with an outcome from your digital ebook, from your product, from your training, from your course, from your voucher where they can go on holiday for, etc., etc., etc. So they need to be able to visualize that. So with that, there has to be an element of validation. So you need testimony and stuff of that sort of nature to clarify that. But in context, all of this, how do you predict outcomes? This is the key element, isn't it? So wouldn't that's one of the strongest points of rapport, is to truly understand human psychology. I've been in the field for 18 years, from NLP through to many, many, many different, with God's blessings, many, many different learnings. All of this needs to be filtered and focused into action taking and clarification. Because once you get clarity, action automatically follows. Alfred Korzybski says we are meaning-making machines. The moment we have made a meaning, that very instant, that very second, an outcome or an action will take place. So if you are taking an action, you have automatically made a meaning pre that action. Does that make sense? So our interview, I've decided to accept your invitation to share with your audience. So what is the meaning for me? The meaning for myself would be probably something along the lines of, A, I'm helping and supporting a brother of mine. B, I am supporting a mentee of mine. But C, I'm also going to the stage of actually helping people who I do not know just yet with God's blessings at some stage, if any of my share is of value. Sometimes people listen to what I say and it does tend to be layered and go quite deep. And really they're expecting just the top end peripheral stuff, which is fine. But I believe houses and skyscrapers and large buildings are built with deep foundations. If you do not get that bit right, you can't build a beautiful dream on top of it. So your dreams have to be built on foundations of belief, of why and how, and what's the benefit to me. Because we make meanings. If it's not made with a meaning, there's no value to that we can't share, we can't create a solution. Okay, and thus the action does not take place. So going back to understanding of simple psychometric, I have studied many. One of the ones I really choose to advocate and use quite a lot is A, because it's easy. If it's not simple, people won't use it. If it's not simple, I won't use it. So the simplicity of it, which is called DISC, if no one's I'm hoping some people have understood this. It's basically DISC profiling. And it's called, D is classified for dominant individuals, I for influencers, S for stability, and C for compliant or calculus individuals. We're actually all of those four, but out of the four elements or four styles of thinking and digestion of the world, because in reality of life, we have, using neurolinguistics to explain this a little bit, as you can see, I weave in and out of knowledge because it's all about how I understand the world, and I'm just sharing from that if that's okay. So we, in using neurolinguistics, have to understand that everybody has a filtration system, a reticular activated system, an RAS, a RAS. With this, we digest the world in our own unique formula, which basically means we will do something like we would generalize, we will delete, and we will basically understand, and we distort as well. We distort the world as well. So the three ways of understanding the world, because we end up with so much information given to us at the same time. If we computed and processed this all the time and it was all live, and we didn't use those three elements of generalization, distortion, and deletion, we would actually go mad. So as sitting on this chair, it's the same digitally, by the way. I'm going into depths of physicalness as well. Yeah. But if I'm sitting on the chair, I've kind of deleted the reality that I'm sitting on the chair. So don't really need to know that I'm sitting on the chair. B, I would have generalized that, well, it's kind of wrong for me to say because you're actually invited into my private home today. But this table, this chair, if it was not mine, if I flipped it to you, is this chair one that you've actually got at home? The answer probably no. You won't have the same chair, but there has to be an element of generalization. Are there 4 legs? Is there somewhere flat? Does that translate in my mind as I can sit on this? So there's a generalization of that information. And there's also distortion, which means basically it's kind of like a prediction, which is what I was touching on a moment ago. You have to predict what people in theory mean as well. When they're trying, you really truly listen to them, you'll understand that they are not thirsty, they're hungry, and so forth. So you're listening to that prediction, so it's a distortion of their information. Sometimes they distort the information by saying, oh, it's cold, or it's windy, so I'm cold. Well, actually, it's windy, it's probably raining as well. So maybe they just don't like the rain. But why do they not like the rain? So there's all these meanings behind that. So in principle, if we understand we have these 3 elements of distortion, deletion, and generalization, if we go down one stage further of deepest rapport, we must understand all of those have to contribute to an inner thinking or an inner being of somebody's head, or somebody's inner psychology. How do they actually understand the world? They are using those 3 filtrations. But now let's go one stage further. How does that translate into their way of thinking? How is this going to help them? So with the dominant individual, and these are psychometrics. These are rough psychometrics. There's much more depth in this, and there are online tests which I'll share with you. We'll go via our Sukhi Wahiwala website shortly, and you'll be able to take this test for free so you can test yourself. Asking very simply a run of questions, nothing excessive, 15 minutes of your time, and it'll print out a computerized encyclopedia of your brain and the way you think. It's just unbelievable. It's like having a little dicky bird on your shoulder constantly, as though somebody's been watching you, as though they're like one of these little personal cams, and they've always learnt on there. So in context of this, the psychometric 4 styles, the 4 styles of the world, or the profiles of the world, are D-dominant. This is an individual who tends to be very much in the space of high-end visualization. They see big picture. They go shooting for the end goal. They're results driven, very, very determined, very driven, very pushy with the way they think in life. Can sometimes be harsh, can sometimes be rude, can sometimes be to the point. They don't have to be, they're not the most sensitive. It's like, are you on my ship or are you off my ship? Are you going where I'm going? If not, then get off. You know, they can be quite blunter sometimes. But their vices are mixed with their positives. The positives are that they're very rarely disturbed or deterred from their end goal and mission. They're results driven. So if they've taken an action, they want to see the results immediately. And they keep very strongly driven. So they make very good, they don't do very close details. So they're not interested in the small detail of information. They're more interested in the outcomes and the results. So they'll be the type of person who doesn't tend to think a lot before they take a big decision. They do think about it and they believe it, they're in it, they're off. So they don't sit there getting paralyzed with lots of information. So they'll make more mistakes than most. But there are the upside of that is that they're actually taking action. So I would look for that type of person. So D dominants are great leaders, great managing directors, and great inspirers and trainers. So then you have those individuals. Their vices are the details, and sometimes they don't care really for other people at all. Well, they do, but the inner self only. Then you have the I. The I is the influencer, the person who shoots themselves into the energy all the time. They're the best connector in the world, the best salesperson. You know, good salespeople. They connect with everybody. They listen to what your needs are. And they sometimes get distracted. So these people are not necessarily the best people to leave in charge of a project. They can be a part of a team, not necessarily the leader, because they'll start having an interview and they'll end up cutting the lawn. It's totally different. So they'll start here and they end up somewhere else because the conversation went that way. So they always need to be brought back into focus, but they are such high octane, they always get the outcome. They're always in that energy. So great salespeople. No detail again, though. They don't necessarily focus on a lot of the inner detail. They focus only primarily on the outcome between two people, the connection they have with them. They're very much, they're aware of what the people think of them. And it tends to affect their energy up and down.
Right.
So they're not the best completers of tasks.
Okay.
But they're excellent at starting the task. Right. So you'll find these individuals start 15 different projects at the same time. And you might know somebody personally, intimately in all of these psychometrics. They'll start a project, but they don't necessarily finish it. Mm-hmm. They tend to start it, but they don't necessarily finish it in timeline, in the captioned time. So great salespeople. Then we have the S for stability individuals. These are individuals who look for stability, good foundations, regularity, individuals who are very super loyal. They're much more interested in having a job for life. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily want to take those risks, but what they do is they put themselves out to ensure the connection, the community is absolutely superb. So there's a lot of motivation that comes from these individuals, a lot of support and group direction that's delivered. So they're probably the one who keeps the group together and driven and moved forward, but not necessarily the person who has to lead. They're very good at resolving challenges, and they're very into the detail. They're not necessarily shackled by process, but they do stick to it.
Right.
Then we have the fourth type of person. By the way, the S's are very good HR or customer services people. Then we move into the other environment where you have the C, compliant / compliance and calculus, which basically is a system-driven, organized, process-driven individual. These individuals look for structure, strategy, equal outcomes. You know, if it's coming through as a process, they must do 5 steps and they'll consistently give the outcomes. So they're looking for consistency. Amazing people for accounting, for legal backup, advocation and stuff of that sort of nature. Also, operations. Yeah, great operational people. You can rely on them. They will always complete the task. If they start it, they will finish it. And they won't start 10 tasks at the same time. They will only start the ones they know they can finish. Right. And they will always keep to the timeline and structure. So the DIs are extroverts.
Right.
And the SCs are introverts, which basically just means a person who needs to recharge in their private time as opposed to public time. Okay. So the SC would go away and probably resign with themselves. They're happy to sit behind a computer, listen to some music, just be on their own to recharge their batteries. But the DI needs to be an external position, communicating, connecting, touching, dancing, energizing themselves with external energy. Right. So how does that translate to digital rapport? Well, if you know these 4 psychometrics of individual, it gives you a very good head start in being able to predict the market. When individuals...
I was going to ask you that question. See, he's already in rapport catching.
Thank you. And that's a deep rapport, right? Thank you for that. Is that the exact question you want to answer?
It was exactly that. Is that if you know the personality types of these different people and their profiles, then if you can appeal to those traits that, as you mentioned, then it's possible to get that connection going online, right?
Yes, it is. So if you can predict with those 4 categories and predict each one of your selections with 4 outcomes, who is this for, which is your D dominant, if they aren't understood that this is for them, if they can't see the result or the answer straight away in your online or offline, they're the first person to come off the website. Right. And then the next person who's going to come off the website is actually the C, compliance. If after they've learnt who this is for, it'll hold them as well. But more importantly, if they don't see a strategy and a structure and a step-by-step process being delivered, something that they can attract to and follow to get a kind of, you would say, an augmented or guaranteed outcome. We must get ourselves in a situation to follow the process. If they can't see there's a system there, or you've got a set process or some experience being delivered, and that the information that you're giving is not verified, they'll be the second person to not buy from you. Right. The third person who would not buy from you was the I, because the I would then be looking at, we've got the who, we've got the what it actually is, and now how do I deliver this? So if you aren't giving practical experience online as well, so videos, visualizations and exercises, please do this, this and this and tell me the results, and some interaction, then the I will disappear as well, because they're thinking, well, this is not practical, I'm not exciting myself, I'm not enjoying myself, so it's not for me. So they won't buy. or they'll buy the first time because they're impulse buyers, but they won't necessarily follow through your course.
Right.
And then the one who really doesn't make decisions on their own personal needs is the S. They might think, okay, can I buy this digital rapport step-by-step guide or become a member so I can help my brother, my sister? So they're into that sort of space. They're always in for service from others, and that's the S. And they're also the last ones to leave the rapport, is because they're just interested in how they can help and how this is going to function. Not the how, the what ifs they're called. So they ask questions. So if I did it this way around, could I help somebody else? If this was this way around, would that give us this outcome? Right. So they're into those sort of questions because they then are like an encyclopedia of answers, which then helps them in their brain to deliver that change for the third person. Right. So does that answer the question of how you can sort of partially predict, how you can hold their attention and their rapport?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's just the kind of understanding your target audience side of it, knowing the possible personality traits could then mean that if you're covering all those points, you're going to be able to capture them.
Spot on.
You know.
Yes.
And that's
you should be able to ignite the outcome that's desired of some kind of interaction and rapport. And as you know, the first steps is a small interaction, then you move up and up and up into the interactions. But do not give people something they generally don't want. Yeah. And the cool part of, or the amazing part of online is that that filtration process is usually self-selected. So the client themselves doesn't feel so suffocated and so driven towards taking their decision. Does that make sense?
That's right, yeah.
So actually online sales is even easier than in person, because you can rely on mechanics, electronics, digital flows, but you as a human being might have had a late night, or a you might have had some kind of good news or bad news, and all of these outcomes come in and they trickle through and change your outcome.
Yeah. Wow. Deep. Cool. Suki, thank you for that. I mean, there's just a quick one that I want to just finish up on is the whole concept of breaking rapport. Right, so I mean, there's many parts in there which, you know, we can see if we did the opposite of that will break rapport. But if you just like shed a bit of light on breaking rapport and what not to do in a way, then that can also cover that side of it.
Well, do you know, if I go back to how the interview started, and I spoke very deeply, you know, this question is so good, because if you know the opposite to what you're trying to achieve, you can at least keep it in mind, can't you? They say that you keep your friends really close, but the reality is that you should keep your enemies closer. So you keep an eye on them. In this digital world, and in this world of connection and communication, in social, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn of this sort of nature, and YouTube, a rapport can be built very quickly, but it can be lost very quickly. And the lost element would be based around you coming out of your integrity again. So you coming out and away from what you were delivering, or a misalignment of your productization for somebody. So breaking rapport is as simple as being dishonest, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes. So in practical terms, this would be basically selling something to somebody who didn't need it. It wasn't for them. It wasn't the correct. Missold. Spot on. So that's a really quick way of getting disrespect and breaking rapport. But going to more mechanical processes is basically as a misalignment.
Right.
And now on a practical basis, it'll be basically not listening to your client needs. So just predicting or guessing. The other section would be is to impose your thoughts. So bullying. You need to do this now. You know, that's the kind of tactics you don't want to go through. Right. So you obviously will get people who are in a different psychometric who will take action. Absolutely, they'll buy today. You'll have a high rate of return, refunds, and if you then deny the refund, you'll break rapport with those individuals. Right. Principally, they won't deal with you ever again. Online has this regularly, but you know, you've got to stand by your word. Sometimes you can get it wrong, and sometimes your vision, mission, genuinely doesn't meet with the other person's mission, vision. It could be about how you see the model of the world. You could be in a big profile, no detail, and you just get the outcomes. And the other person would possibly have a difference with you, where they're looking at the detail all the time. They don't see the big picture, and they lose hope, or they don't get the feedback of information they require. You know, sometimes they need details, and they need to be brought along with the process. So these are two elements that you need to be looked at. So it could also be that you just mismatched people, mismatched your product with the needs of the client. The easiest way is to admit it. We're all humans, and to be honest about it, and be very, very rapid and quick to rectify it. And try your best. Even if that client's never going to meet with you ever again or work with you, do it in your heart and say, I'm doing it with integrity. Because it wasn't intentionally sold. If it's something that's not wrong, give them a money-back guarantee. Fine. Help them. Let them move on with their life. Does that make sense? So don't try to force and hold and retract. Because one of the quickest rapport blowers is when you don't look after your client base. If they want a refund and you decide, actually, I'm not going to give you the refund. Does that make sense? And what will happen is I've had this many a time when I've had clients who, business online, online business where people have purchased something and it's not what they wanted. They've refunded it, but they've come back and bought again from us because when they wanted to refund it, it was refunded like that. And there was no challenge. So they felt very secure. It's the John Lewis element of this world, You know that you're not going to get undersold by them. It's an Apple philosophy. You know, when you buy an Apple product, if it doesn't suit you, you can go back and return it. It's as simple as that. You have 14 days, no quibble. You can buy it in Scotland, you can go and return it in Australia. So there's the philosophy and understanding, because always stand by your word and rectify. We're all humans. We can make mistakes and errors. Sometimes it can happen online as well, but rectify it. And obviously, with respect, if you keep rapport with that person, which is basically keep understanding and allowing them to make the decision, you have the opportunity of switch selling to find the correct product for them, advise them correctly, or alternatively just say, do you know what, here's your money back, and if you ever feel in future you want to work from us, come and buy from us, buy again. If not, wish you all the best.
So basically, honesty will bring you back into rapport.
It will. And so you want to break rapport? Dishonesty.
Dishonesty. Well, that's quite simple. Basics. Right down to the basics on that. That's fantastic. Right, Suki, thank you very much on that. If people want to find out more about you, or what can they do? And if they want to find out more about this disc profiling,
well, I'll be humbled because I have a series of disc profiling courses where people can actually learn themselves first, because once you learn yourself as an individual, you'll be in a position where you can at least share this information out to the third person. So if you understand yourself, which is when I said to you originally, you need to be aligned with yourself first before you can be in rapport with anybody. So self-rapport is the first element, then external rapport can happen. So it's internal, then external. So everybody should be queuing up to say, I want to learn myself better, because most of us don't really know each other. They just think they know each other. So when you do a psychometric test, it tells you exactly who you are, what you are, and be very surprised to get this report and say, you'll know it's so much like you, but let me tell you something funny though, Jatinder. The next step is to decline it and say, that's not like me. That's exactly what happens. Is sometimes the truth hurts. But when you've had time to just settle it over and go through it again, you think, oh my God, it just is correct. So first steps is, because I really live by creating rapport for other people and helping them to help themselves. Self-empowerment, everything that I deliver and change and share through my private mentoring, which I do one-to-one mentoring with individuals, or whether I through one of my augmented online processes, trainings, or even some of my boardrooms, which are basically a monthly scheduled meeting of accountability masterminding with a clear set outcome with KPIs all maintained and monitored. The main key element of this is to ensure that you understand what you want to achieve in life. So the clarity is first. So in context of all of these elements, always start with yourself before you start with anybody else, and that's where you get true rapport. If they want to work, if anybody wants to get in touch and work with me through understanding themselves first, so they can help other people, I'll soon be bringing a qualified DISC practitioner training, which we're about to bring in from the originators of DISC, so that people can actually A, learn themselves, B, help others to learn themselves, and C, create physical and online rapport in a deep way that has never been paralleled before. Basically, all of our trainings will go through to, if I can share my website, it's Sukhi Wahiwala, that's SUKHIWAHIWALA.com. And from there, you'll find some trainings and contact. Feel free to go in the contact form on there, connect with me, I will respond because it comes to me personally, and I'll be humbled to see if I can help anybody on their journey. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking a time to select me for interview, and I'm really, really humbled.
I'm blown away, and you see why I was so excited. So thank you very much, Suki, much appreciated.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.